They stood unarmed, bound, and subdued. 100,000 captives lined up under a blazing December sun. What followed was not a clash of armies, but a calculated execution. The year was 1398, and the man behind it was Timur, known as Tamerlane, arguably the most feared conqueror of the late medieval Islamic world. By the time Tamerlane reached the gates of Delhi, he had already carved a trail of destruction from Central Asia through Afghanistan and into northern India. His campaign was not one of conquest alone. It was one of terror, and Delhi was its next victim. The Battle of Delhi began on December 17, 1398. The defending army of the Delhi Sultanate, led by Sultan Nasiruddin Mahmud Shah Tughlaq, was vast but hastily assembled. Many of its soldiers were elephants armoured in chainmail and spikes. According to the chronicler Yazdi in the Zafarnama, Timur's strategy neutralized this threat by loading his camels with straw, setting them ablaze, and sending them into the enemy lines, throwing the elephants into chaos. The Delhi forces disintegrated. The city was left defenseless. But the massacre did not begin during the battle. It came after. Tamerlane had captured over 100,000, mostly Hindu prisoners during his march. Once in Delhi, he feared they might rebel during the occupation. According to contemporary Persian sources like Nizam al-Din Shami, and later corroborated by Arab historian Ibn Arabshah, Timur issued a chilling command. All 100,000 prisoners were to be killed in a single day. Executioners worked methodically through the night. Chains rattled, bodies fell in heaps. No exceptions were made, not for the elderly, nor for children, nor for women. Ibn Arabshah later wrote, "The sword of his wrath spared neither the weak nor the strong." This was not mere bloodlust. It was psychological warfare. The scale of death delivered a brutal message to all who might consider defiance. Resistance meant annihilation. The Skull Pyramid, Tamerlane's gruesome warning to rebels. When the people of Isfahan rebelled against Timur in 1387, they could not have imagined the scale of the retribution that would follow. What began as a surrender quickly transformed into one of the most horrifying massacres in medieval history. One immortalized not in chronicles alone, but in pyramids of human skulls. Isfahan, a wealthy and culturally vibrant city in Persia, had initially submitted to Timur without resistance. Known as Amir Timur, the Central Asian warlord had already subdued much of the Iranian plateau. His administrators were stationed in the city, collecting tribute and enforcing order. But soon after, an uprising erupted. Local citizens reportedly killed a detachment of Timur's occupying troops, an act that, in his doctrine of vengeance, demanded absolute and public punishment. According to the 15th century historian Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi in his official biography Zafarnama, Timur responded with precision and merciless resolve. He ordered a general massacre of the population. Yazdi records that 70,000 people were executed. Other chroniclers of the time, including the Arab historian Ibn Khaldun, placed the number as high as 200,000. But it was not simply the number of the dead that stunned the Islamic world, it was how their remains were used. After the slaughter, 28 towers built from human skulls were raised around the city. Each tower was composed of hundreds, even thousands, of heads. The intent was unmistakable. This was a warning to any city or province tempted to rebel. These ghastly structures were not chaotic heaps. They were methodically constructed, reportedly stacked by rank, soldiers, civilians, clerics, all arranged with grim precision. Eyewitnesses and later travelers to the region attested that skulls remained visible for years. Timur never disavowed these actions. On the contrary, Yazdi's Zafarnama frames them as part of Timur's larger mission to restore order through fear. His policy was clear. Defiance would be answered not with negotiation, but annihilation. The skull pyramids of Isfahan were no mere aftermath. They were monuments of warning. Buried alive, the fate of defeated soldiers. They believed his word. They surrendered without resistance, on the condition that their blood would not be spilled. But they did not understand what Timur meant when he agreed to spare their blood. In 1400, during the siege of Sivas, the central Anatolian city witnessed one of the most horrifying betrayals in medieval warfare. 3,000 soldiers buried alive by Timur's forces. Sivas, known historically as Sebastia, was a fortified city under the control of the Ottoman-allied Eretnid Emirate, governed at the time by a Turkmen garrison loyal to the Sultan of the Mamluk Sultanate. When Timur, known as Sahib Kiran, or Lord of the Auspicious Conjunction, invaded Anatolia as part of his western campaigns, Sivas stood in his path. After a brief siege, the defenders, believing they could preserve their lives, agreed to surrender. Timur is recorded by the Persian chronicler Sharaf ad-Din Ali Yazdi in the Zafarnama as having promised the defenders that no blood would be spilled. But his interpretation of the promise was chilling. Instead of killing the garrison by the sword, he ordered 3,000 soldiers to be buried alive. By avoiding the shedding of blood, Timur remained true, technically, to his word, but violated the very spirit of it in a calculated display of cruelty. Eyewitness accounts are limited, but Yazdi's detailed descriptions leave no ambiguity. The prisoners were thrown into large trenches, which were then filled in while they were still alive. This act of calculated terror was not merely a punishment, it was a strategic signal to other Anatolian cities and rulers. Submission offered no guarantee of mercy. The horror of Sivas sent shockwaves through the region. Cities that had considered resistance quickly reconsidered. The psychological warfare Timur waged was often more devastating than the physical destruction his armies caused. His reign of terror did not rely only on mass executions or burning cities, it also rested on distortions of honor and twisted definitions of mercy. By burying prisoners alive, Timur turned his promises into tools of deception. At Sivas, the earth itself became the executioner, and long after the last breath was smothered beneath the soil, the memory of that betrayal endured. Timur's campaigns were not mere wars of expansion. They were deliberate exhibitions of fear, etched in fire and bone. Cities did not fall, they were erased. His rule shattered resistance, but at a cost that still chills the pages of history. These events challenge us to ask, when power abandons mercy, what remains of humanity? Not every empire is built to last, but some are built to be remembered. Timur made certain of that.